Greetings. This is the how I built it video for the retro rocket here. This is the finalist version with some energy weapons popped on it for my personal use, whereas the original version I made and tested was a all vanilla no mods version. So this is how it started out, as a bit of a test mechanism for the idea of, can I flip my cockpit 180 degrees and still fly? So it's got the sort of TIE Fighter-y shape in the middle there in white, which is fuel tanks and cargo, and that's the main ship. And then the dark cargo box frame is all a subgrid coming off that hinge in the middle there. So ultimately the whole ship ends up being a huge subgrid that gets flipped around this little TIE Fighter shaped gizmo in the middle here. So that's it. Facing upwards or facing downwards, it's actually rotating. It's attached at the main ship and rotating the frame at the moment. So once it's down on the ground, that'll be reversed, and it'll be this little inside area here that moves. At the moment it's the whole shebang outside ship, which would not work once the whole ship is in the way. So that's what it's based around. I figured that with some thrusters stuck all over it could actually fly. So I wanted to build enough of it to make it flyable, and of course once you've done that, it's there and you can just turn it into a fancier ship, so that's what you end up doing. So positioning 4 big fat hydrogen thrusters down the bottom. Need plenty of lift, and attaching a myriad of little thrusters out on the sides here, because this in white is again the main ship, so all your inertial dampener behavior is going to be based on the position of that ship. So that's where you want all your little thrust control rockets that do all your fiddly corrections and things. You want them oriented the way your cockpit is oriented. You don't want them all over this giant subgrid wrapped around you. So pretty well all the rockets on the subgrids, on the big subgrid, just face down. So this is a bunch of small tanks and a bunch of gas generators tacked to the bottom of them in a row. Obviously this ship needs to be piled full of ice. All those cargo boxes there can be filled with ice, and then all those converters can convert it into fuel. And so there's plenty of tanks built into the hull to store all that, creating a nice big open space here around the cockpit. So gradually adding more engines. So this is if you're in the cockpit using an external view and you start flipping it at the moment. You can see that I've disconnected it and it's now sitting on its docking foot. So when this rotates and you're in the cockpit, the whole ship does a 180 underneath you, and yet the whole ship stays still. It's very zen because the foot is anchored to the ground. Big fat fuel tanks going in on top, so just an extra row of structural cargo there, forming the connections for the big stack of tanks to go on top. And then they've just got some conveyor junctions joining them up at strategic points that I can then tack other things onto. A set of 4 smalls and 4 large on the bottom. So the large ones are broken into 2 sets of 2 and are adjustable, so that I can tweak how much thrust I want from each set. And the 4 small ones are just always set to maximum override, and I just switch them on when I need a sudden burst of upthrust. Positioning of jump drives. The ship has 3 jump drives that are part of the nose. So there's a big 8 stack of tanks there, and then there's a 3 stack of jump drives on top of it, and another 2 large tanks next to the jump drives, and then a final little strip of cargo space at the top with a single tank on the nose. That cargo at the top is connected through gas tanks, so it'll only ever hold ice, maybe some ore, some ammo. It's got limited access, that's alright. Pop the doors in, temporary reactor to keep everything powered while I figure out where everything goes. Lots of holes in the floor. So with the floor positioned down low over the backs of the thrusters, means I end up having to put plates on the floor to cover up the holes in the floor, but that's no biggie. There's lots of furniture that goes around the edges that blocks up all the edge holes, so it's just a bunch of plates in the middle to walk on. Gradually filling in all the bits. Lots of gas generators, obviously very important. Hydrogen engines, it's a hydrogen rocket in every respect. There's no ions, there's no jets. There's 6 of my hydrogen engines gone in there, so they're just positioned so the cockpit can flip around and miss them. If you put one in the middle, the cockpit will hit it. Parachutes. Don't leave home without plenty of parachutes. This thing is heavy. Got a multitude of parachutes built into the nose here, so I can just pop all them at once, and it can just dangle from the nose and the foot can be pointed at the ground. Fingers crossed, that's the plan. So put the little spangles on the edge bits so that they don't just look like a bunch of thrusters. Started putting some little layers of minimalist armour. I tend to slap on things, half-white armour. Don't feel the need to have massive amounts of armoured blocks stuck all over the outside everywhere. It's going to have 2 shields when I'm eventually using my version. This is all still vanilla retro rocket version being built. I figured I'd build a vanilla version, make a blueprint, and then subsequently stack all my goodies on it, all my the modded stuff that I particularly like and favour and use on this server. So we've got some floor plates so you can walk on the floor without falling through and into a rocket engine. That's ingot storage in the turquoise there, and the ingot sorter. That's the component sorter, and a small refinery, small assembler in the middle. So at the moment there's no ore sorter. For some reason I haven't put it in yet, but the ore comes in through the oxygen tank, so these components can't get in there and start swirling in a circle. But yeah, the assembler's straight over the door, so you can just pop in the door, look straight up and pull things out of the assembler that you've just had manufactured. Anything that's a component gets slept back through the basic refinery and then out and upwards into component storage, and any ingots that are in the assembler or the refinery get sucked out to the left there and into those turquoise boxes. So I filled it full of ice and then just left the ice generators running for hours so that all this massive fuel capacity was nice and filled up. And I dumped out the extra ice, so it's a good idea with a ship like this to have that sorter and connector there that's just set to dump stone, ice, gravel, and you just take things off and on the white list as you need to dump various things. You switch it on and off and change the list a bit. That way you're not too heavy for takeoff is the key thing. Don't want to take off with this massive stack of ice in the hold, making me heavy. Probably would have been fine, but for your shakedown cruise, you generally want a light cargo load so that you can assess what your cargo capacity might be from how easy your launch was. Lots of finished off spangles here, extra ray guns on the outsides. She's pretty much good to go at this point. Antennas or detectors. These are sort of side strafing to help me land, propel around while I'm vertical. All good. She's ready to go. And that's how we build that.